Hello everyone, I'm Rabbi Chaitovsky. Welcome to another video Dvar here from my office at BMH-BJ in Denver, Colorado. This coming Saturday night, we usher in a dark and dreary day on our calendar. It is the fast day of the 9th of Av. There's an ironic twist to this fast day this year because it actually occurs tonight and tomorrow, Friday night and Shabbat. Tonight is actually the beginning of the 9th of Av, and tomorrow throughout the day is the 9th of Av. And everyone knows that with the exception of Yom Kippur, we do not fast on Shabbat. That's not totally true because the fast of Tisha B'Av, even though it's being pushed off, actually begins tomorrow, late in the afternoon, early in the evening, before Shabbat is over. And it extends through Sunday. What is Tisha B'Av about? And I know that everyone knows it's about the destruction of our temples. And I know that many of us are aware of other historical events throughout history that that took place on or about this day. But actually, Tisha B'Av goes back to an event that perhaps we don't automatically connect with such tragedy. The Jewish people were at the borders of Israel 2 years after leaving Egypt. And Moses, for whatever the reason, sends a reconnaissance mission. A group of 12 righteous leaders to go on an intelligence mission and gather some information to let the Israelites know what they will encounter when they get into the land of Israel, the promised land. And with the exception of 2 of the spies, Joshua and Caleb, the other spies bring back a true but overwhelmingly devastating report about the prospects for victory in overtaking that land. And the people are absolutely demoralized. And God decides that this is not the group of Israelites who are going to make it into the land of Israel. And so, another 38 years, 40 years total, another 38 years of wandering around the desert happens. And that 38-year wandering comes to an end with this week's Torah portion of Devarim, where Moses reviews history, and Moses will bid farewell to the Jewish people. He is now talking to a group of Israelites who have not had the first-hand experience of slavery and leaving Egypt, receiving the Torah, the episode of the Meraglim, of the spies that led to the wandering. None of the people now at the borders of Israel experience any of that. They are a clean slate who know only of God's beautiful care for them during that 38-year wandering. This is the group ready to enter the land of Israel. So on this Shabbat, that is actually Tisha B'Av, and that will mark the beginning of the fast on Saturday evening, we read Saturday morning about the re-entry into the land of Israel. But Tisha B'Av celebrates our being exiled from the land. There's an irony there. In the morning, we read about entering the land, and in the evening, we read the bookend of that, getting kicked out of the land. And we're asked to remember that juxtaposition and to sit on the floor and sit in the darkness and read Lamentations that begin with the word Eicha. How in the world has this beautiful city ended up being so desolate? It's a very hard thing to do, to mourn for that kind of history, events that took place 3,000 or 4,000 years ago, and the event of the destruction of the temple that took place more than 2,000 years ago. How do we get into it? So I just have one word of advice, and it has to do with the rabbinic take on history. You know, if you read history, and if you read Josephus, Jewish historian, and if you read the first chapter of Pirkei Avot, you can clearly see the arc of disintegration that plagued the Jews living in Israel. wasn't only their fault. Of course, there were outside forces acting. The government was increasingly strangling the Jewish people. But Josephus writes, and the rabbis seem to support this. They seem to, their behavior, their comments support what he writes. There were so many factions, so many different political parties. Each of them felt they were the only way to get anything done. And Josephus says because of that factionalism, the people disintegrated. The fabric of society disintegrated. Well, the rabbis didn't want to talk about politics. The rabbis wanted to talk about the here and now. They want to talk about you and me. They want to talk about relationships. So they took what historians called factionalism, and they put it in terms of relationships. They called it sinat chinam. Needless hatred. The inability to get along with someone else, inability to talk with someone else because, well, for no reason. There's always going to be disagreements. Doesn't mean you can't talk to a person. So the rabbis took what were arguably the actual historical facts leading to the destruction of the temple and our exile from the land, and they put it in a religious, a values context. How do you have a conversation with someone? How do you build a relationship with someone? So whether we're able to relate to the destruction of the temple, and whether we yearn for a rebuilding of a temple or not, the irony of, in the morning, having read about our victorious entry into that land of Israel, and in the evening, re-experiencing getting kicked out of that land, should not be lost upon us. And the rabbis want us to re-examine and reimagine what that was all about in a deeply personal way. And they say, think about relationships. And that's what I want us to do this weekend. This is a marvelous opportunity, even amidst the doom and gloom that is part of Tisha B'Av. It's an opportunity to revisit what it means to love someone, what it means to have a relationship with someone, what it means to get along with someone, even if you happen to disagree with some of their opinions or some of their views. Our tradition tells us that Tisha B'Av has long been a dark and tragic day in our calendar. But there will come a time when Tisha B'Av will be transformed from a day of darkness to a day of light, from a day of mourning to a day of celebration. We are going to be the ones who are going to make that happen. And we have to begin to make that happen by thinking about this on this Shabbat, where the confluence, the continuum of entering Israel and then being kicked out of Israel is right there in front of us. This is one of the best opportunities we have to think about this. And I hope we take that opportunity. You can join us here at BMH-BJ for Tisha B'Av services tomorrow evening at 7:55, and then on Sunday morning at 8:30, followed by a marvelous family program for children and adults of all ages involving an art project, and a special showing of a movie about Elie Wiesel, who passed away just a few weeks ago, called First Person Singular. One of the great luminaries of our day who taught us that it is possible to live and love in the aftermath of Churban, in the aftermath of destruction. And that's what we're trying to do ever since the temple was destroyed. Make a Jewish life in the aftermath of that destruction. We've done it. It can be done. But there's still much work left to be done. Shabbat Shalom.